Hello, parents and teachers who may be watching. I'm Dr. Sandy Atkins, Sandy, and in this video, we're going to be looking at one of the 5 strands of math proficiency. That's strategic competence. Now, in previous videos, we've looked at the 5 strands. I'll leave a link in the description below for the video that just looks at an overview summary of all 5 strands, and then the other ones that we've done on each individual strand. Now, one of the things to remember with the 5 strands is that they are interdependent, they're interwoven. If your child is really good with procedures and rules and getting that, that doesn't mean we would necessarily say they're proficient. They need to be proficient at all 5. So that's conceptual understanding, the understanding of what's going on, the why and the how, procedural fluency. And we talk about procedural flexibility, being able to come in and answer from more than one way, and being able to pick the most efficient strategy. Strategic competence, which we'll look at in this video, adaptive reasoning, and getting to understand the why, the how, the defending of what you're doing, but the why and the how to look for patterns, to come up with rules, to come up with those links that sometimes we've told them in the past, but we want them to be able to notice those. And then productive disposition, knowing that they are capable and it may take some time, but they need the stamina to work it, stick with it, that perseverance. So in this video, as I said, we're going to look at strategic competence, which is that ability to formulate, represent, solve problems, know that you can use math to solve problems. So recognizing that. And as we get into this, I hope you'll see that it requires an understanding of the problem first, as well as the understanding of the mathematics. That's where concepts come in. And then we use that procedural fluency to work through answers. But strategic competence is a bit more than just having strategies to get answers. So a quick little look at this just to see the difference. We're used to seeing problems like this that we're just asked to get a solution to. A child with strategic competence would be able to describe a situation that could be represented by that expression and then solve it. See, it takes a bit more understanding, okay? Now, hand in hand with developing strategic competence is this cognitive demand. You're going to be seeing that your child is given more in school than just recalling procedures and getting answers to things, more than just knowing skills. It really gets into strategic thinking and extending their thinking. And we're wanting them to go beyond that initial recall and reproduction. So, as I said, it involves understanding the problem and understanding when and how math can be used to solve a problem. So typically when I work with your children, if I get a chance to do that, or I work with teachers, we talk about making math visible in 4 ways. We want them to be able to build it, represent it with concrete materials, represent it with pictures, represent it with language. And just think about the language involved. If I were to ask you to read this, you might say 8 plus 4 without hesitation, which is mathematically correct. But think about, you read the symbols. That symbol, that plus word, is rarely in a word problem. Your child is not told which operation they're to use in the word problem. So that plus isn't there. So we want your child to get used to reading these using more of a conceptual language. Things like 8 put together with 4, 8 combined with 4, 8 joined with 4. See, words like combine and put together and join are all in story problems. And we want your child to make a strong link between the symbols and that language. So we're going to build the language of story problems when they're doing their computation, if we get them to read things in that way. Think about minus, 8 minus 4. Correct. You're reading those symbols beautifully, right? But I want your child to think about this as 8 remove 4, 8 take away 4. How many more than 4 is 8? How many fewer than 8 is 4? See comparisons, right? As well as removals. When we get to multiplication, it could be 8 groups of 4. 8 rows of 4, 8 jumps of 4, or separating 8 into 4 equal groups, or asking ourselves how many 4s are in 8. So thinking about that language as more than just symbol reading. We also want them to work with symbols and do them accurately. There's a precision involved in symbols, especially in the use of equality. So typically, I'll work with your children, and we work with your children to move from the concrete to pictorial and using that language and the related symbols and building connections between them all. But it's not always that one direction. Sometimes we might start with the picture and have them build it, or then the language. Or we could start with the language, have them build it, draw the related picture, and write the related symbols. For your child to be fluent, they need to be able to work very easily between all of these different representations. For some of your children, they're really good at the symbols. They're really good at memorizing them. But we don't want them to miss out on what it looks like when they build it and when they draw it and what it says, because having that kind of understanding will help them with non-routine problems they may get. That's what problem solving really is about, and that's the need for 21st century mathematics. Now, just think about some of these problems. This is a pre-K problem. And in this pre-K problem, if you notice, it's asking them, and you can see 3 happy snowmen standing tall, which is the tallest of them all? The children look at that, and, what's the answer? It's a single answer problem the way we do that. But if we want to build strategic competence, quite often, I'll even remove the question, at least remove those words, and just say, what do you notice? Now, if you'd like, pause the video and take some time to really look at the picture and all the math in it. Notice 3 different heights of trees, 3 rabbits with their cottontails, all different sizes, their ears different lengths, the mountains, small, medium, large. The bows on the hats are different. The sizes of the top hats are different. And notice that the longest bow doesn't necessarily, right? We've got the longest bow, we've got the shortest. They happen to go with the hats, but you don't have the shortest broom width with the shortest snowman. Notice the shortest width of the broom is with the tall snowman. Look at the carrots for their noses. Notice the 3s and everything. Okay, so if I ask your child, what do you notice? What do you wonder about this? It's a much richer problem for your children, more math involved in it. Now, we can do the same idea. This is a 5th grade graph. See, part of strategic competence is understanding the graph. And what happens quite often to children is they're asked a question and their goal is to get the answer as fast as possible, and they've skipped over the understanding the problem part. Okay, so getting them to understand, even knowing how much is a milliliter, what's going on here, what math problems could I ask you to solve, what math problems or questions could you answer? See, it makes it much more open-ended, much more powerful for your children. So consider when you're helping your children, covering up the question, just have them tell you about what they see, what do they notice, especially when they're giving graphs or pictures. Now, one other thing to think about with this, keep in mind drawing pictures, concrete, pictorial, all of that. But this was a story, the kindergarten, where they were told early in the year that there was a dream city Terry had thought of. And they had to build, when they woke up, they couldn't remember it. And essentially, it had 3 different buildings with a pattern block fence going around it. And a pattern block fence was in a pattern. And you can see some examples here, one example. So the children were doing this. And then we thought, have them draw it, right? What they build, they draw. Now, quite often what we do is we make assumptions that the children don't have a way to build it if we don't show them. Or we want to model for them a way to get it because we don't want that frustration. But see, part of helping them build productive disposition, strategic competence, is giving them the gift of time to think. Now, if I had modeled for them, I would probably have done front views of what they were seeing, right? Front views of the buildings, a front view of that pattern block fence. But we paused when we were doing this with kids and we let them draw what they saw, right? And this is what we saw. One child, one little girl, drew this for that first building. Now notice she's showing us an aerial view of how they stacked up from the bottom up to the top. A little boy in that class, he did a similar idea for the pattern block, right? If you do the aerial view for the pattern block fence, that's what you see. See, by modeling for children and showing them how they could get an answer tends to shift their thinking from how they think about it to how we think about it. They tend to mimic us or model for us. And one thing in mathematics we want to make sure that we're doing is, again, getting them to think, getting them to be okay that it may take them a while to work it out, getting them to try something and deciding it didn't work. Very important skill for mathematics, right? So we want them to be flexible. We want them to be able to solve non-routine problems, not just mimic what we have modeled for them to do a problem. We want to remember that for strategic competence, they first must understand the graphic, what the problem is, right? Whether it's like our dripping faucet graphic or our picture of the snowman. We want to give them as much opportunity as they can to notice things and think mathematically. And so some ground rules to think about. It's really important to help your child understand it's not about speed. It's not how fast you can get to an answer. It's how well you understand the problem and all of the potential questions you could be asked about it. It's important for your child to also learn to give their group mates the gift of time. What sometimes happens is the children race to see who gets the answer first, and then they show their group mate. And now what has happened? They have removed the ability for their group mate to think. We want all the children to think about it, to give your child a chance to think if they weren't as fast as one of their group mates. So when they want to tell somebody the answer, we want your child to think of a question they could ask instead and offer it if somebody's stuck. And it's not a question that helps them, like if the answer's 6, we don't want the question to be, what's 2 times 3? See, that doesn't help think through the problem. So asking them sometimes when you're helping with their homework, well, what questions could you ask somebody who might be stuck with this problem? And then if someone tries to tell them how to do it, get them used to saying, wait, don't tell me, I need to think about this. Like, that's okay to say, I need some more time. Because we don't want us to be the answer key, and we don't want your child to be the answer key for others. It's really important that all the children get an opportunity to develop strategic competence. And so one question I tend to ask children is my launch question when we debrief is, if you disagree with someone, ask them a question to help them change their mind. Now, I have to confess, when I first do this with kids, some children will turn to another and say, hey, would you please change your mind? That's the question they have. It takes some thought. Think about that cognitive demand idea. Asking questions to help someone change their mind really increases cognitive demand. So think about those specific steps you can take when you're helping your child with that homework. Helping them get their problems is what could they do, and help them learn to adopt these types of ideas when they're working in school with their peers. So I hope you found that helpful. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel. It's free. Click the notifications bell so that you know when more videos are coming. Share with whoever this might be helpful for. All of those things really help this channel. And if you have a request for a topic, something you'd like to see in the future, please don't hesitate to put it in the comments below. I do look at those. Thanks so much for watching.